You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Welcome, fellow patriots. Get ready for an hour of unabashedly pro-American, pro-conservative, and pro-biblical principles. This is the Blake Johnson Program.
Hello and welcome, everyone. This is the Blake Johnson Program. You are here. That's right, you are here, and it is just great. This is the Lanterns Radio Network, where we are here to fix the machine. And one thing I'd like to fix is Missouri, and the fact that we still don't seem to be in spring weather here. For some reason, it was snowing over the weekend, and it was below freezing at one point, I believe. It's just unreal. It is simply unreal. So I would like to change that. Also would like to eliminate allergies. If we could just all come together and eliminate allergies, that would be amazing. I've been suffering through them pretty hardcore over the past few days, but was finally able to get over that a little bit. Get a little bit of a reprieve from that. So, yeah, that's a great way to start off the week. But I will say, having allergies, having, slightly stuffed up nose, does make for good radio because it makes your voice deeper. So there's always that. Hope you had a good week. I hope you had a good weekend. We will get into a lot of the news that's going on. There's so much to catch up on. It's just hard to get to all of it, especially in a 1 hour block. But before we do that, I wanted to spend the next few minutes and talk about something good, talk about something positive. I'm assuming most of you out there listen to Christian music, listen to music in general. You like music. If you're anything like me, you really like Christian music. But I have to say, it is really hard sometimes to find bands that are genuine. It's really hard sometimes to find artists who are the same way off stage that they are on stage. It is really easy and tempting to fake it, to just put on a show and hide what's really going on underneath, hide what's going on inside of you. And I'm not saying that, people should just expose everything that's going on in their lives. But, especially if you're a Christian artist, a Christian band, there has to be an example there. You have to at least try, at least do the best that you can to live what you say you believe. And I had the wonderful opportunity over the weekend to go to the Newsboys United Tour concert in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. I've been a huge fan of the Newsboys for 10 years now. And this was an awesome tour, especially because they have the current lineup with Michael Tate, and they brought back Peter Furler and Phil Joel from the original Newsboys lineup. They brought them all together into this 1 2-hour Newsboys show with, the first half of the show being the current lineup, and then the second half being the Newsboys former lineup. And it was really, really awesome. So I'd purchased a VIP ticket because I wanted to meet him, get my picture taken with him and whatnot. So my parents and my brother went with me, and it was an amazing experience, I will say. And not just because of the concert, but because of who those guys are. So here's what happened. This is this is mind-blowing that this even happened. So we get there to the location. It's about almost a 3-hour drive to get from where I live to the concert. But we'd been wanting to see Peter and Phil for so long from the original lineup, and we didn't think we'd be able to see them. Well, then they announced this tour, and we're like, oh my gosh, we'll be able to go see the traditional lineup and be able to hear all the old school songs that we all love. So we get there to the actual place, and my parents and brother, they had a package below mine. I had the VIP package. I think they had the premium package. So we all got early entry, but if you're VIP, you also get a picture with the band. Well, they didn't have that because they couldn't afford it, because they bought their own tickets, all together, whereas I purchased mine separately, so I could afford it. So we get there, and we're standing in the early entrance line, and at one point, this one lady walks out, and she says, "Is there a Blake Johnson here?" Now, in order to give you some context of why she would say that, I actually know Peter Furler, in that I've interacted with him on social media. He's for those of you who don't know, if you just look up the Newsboys, he's the bald guy, white guy. He's the guy that made songs like He Reigns, It Is You, I Am Free, Breakfast, all those really popular songs. That's him. And he was the guy that founded the Newsboys. So I already knew him. And I had seen him in concert a couple of times, but I'd never actually met him in person. So I tweeted him before we went to the show saying, hey, we're going to actually be here. I didn't know if he'd see it. I don't know if he'd remember me or not, because it was years ago when we used to interact, fairly often on social media. But he liked my tweet. He clicked like on it, so he'd seen it. But I wasn't for sure if it was really him or if it was someone else running his page. I didn't know. I just didn't want to get my hopes up. So now fast forward back to where I was saying earlier. This lady walks out and she says, "Is there a Blake Johnson here?" And obviously I was like, "Oh yeah, that's me." So I walked over to her and she said, Peter Furler sent me to come get you. He wants you to come in early." And I'm like, what? and man, keep in mind my parents are right behind me, still in line, and she's like, "Did you have you have your family with you?" I said, "Yeah, they're with me." She's like, "Okay, well, have them come on in too. He wants to meet all of you." So we come in, and she said, "Peter wants all of you to have the VIP package." So I guess he wanted to make sure we all had the same package. I think he found out that I was the only one that had it. So he decided to go ahead and upgrade my parents and brother to the VIP. Well, this is when it gets even cooler. So she brings us over to this corner area, to stand and wait, because she said that Peter wants to come out personally and meet us. And we're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So we're just standing there, just talking, just chatting with this lady, that Lisa Loftus, by the way. Shout out to Lisa Loftus. She was the one that came out and asked for me. I had known her for a while too. So we're just talking to her and a couple other people, and all of a sudden I just happened to turn over to my left, and I saw this semi-short, and I say that because, well, I'm short too, so I'm one to talk. He was walking towards me, this skinny guy, fully dressed in black, had a cap on, and I just knew it was Peter. And I just looked him in the eye. I was like, yep, that's Peter. He's walking towards me, and I was like, hey, how's it going? And in that wonderful Aussie accent, he says, hey, mate, how's it going? How you doing? And he walks over, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And of course, my parents are freaking out too, because they're huge fans. My mom, he knows my mom too, and my brother's a huge fan. So I shake his hand. He gives my mom a hug, and he's like, hey, it's great that you all came out. And he just came out to make sure. He's like, so you guys, how many VIP passes do I need to come and get? So we told him 3. So he leaves, goes all the way back to get 3 VIP badges for the rest of my family. Does it himself, goes to get it, comes back, and brings those to them. And he says, I'm so glad that you guys came. I wanted to make sure that you all were taken care of. And one thing that Lisa told us while we were waiting is, for the longtime fans especially, Peter wants to make sure that they're taken care of, and especially if the weather's bad outside, he doesn't want them standing outside in the cold. Well, it was really cold outside. He didn't want that, so he had us come in, and he wanted to make sure that we were all together and we were all able to get the same thing. So I was just blown away by that. I did not expect that. I was kind of hoping that we'd be able to all meet him, but I didn't know if that would work. I didn't know how that would play out. I didn't know if they'd be too busy. But I just knowing that he took the effort to make sure, he sent for me and he sent for my family, and he made sure that we were taken care of, and he went the extra mile to make sure. He did it himself to give them their passes. Could have easily had somebody else do it, but he took the effort to do it himself. I just loved that. So that happens, and then of course we're just starstruck. We're like, oh my gosh, we just talked to Peter Furler. This is incredible. So then they have the Q&A session right before they open the doors for everybody else to come inside. They have the Q&A session. I get to ask my question. I ask them, what was the hardest, most difficult music video that you guys have ever produced, and they spent a good amount of time on it. And they answered several other really great questions. I was impressed by all the questions that were asked. Get that done, and then we get in line to do the meet and greet, photo, getting a picture taken. So, I kind of wanted to sit with my family, but then I also was like, well, because I already had my seat picked out, obviously, so I had to sit there. I couldn't just take any other seat because it could be somebody else's. That and the fact that I was pretty darn close to the stage, and my family was several rows back, so I was like, I kind of want to be closer up, so I'll just stay here. But I did go, obviously hang out with them as much as I could. So they got their pictures taken with Peter first, and with the rest of the band, and so that was pretty awesome. And then I get up and take my photo with them. Of course, I'm chit-chatting with the rest of the band, and as soon as I get my picture taken, Peter, he's right there with me, and he says, "Hey, thanks so much for coming. I'm really glad that you came tonight." And I said, "Hey, thanks so much for going the extra mile and doing all that for us. That's awesome." He's like, "Yeah, absolutely, no problem. I'm more than happy to do it." And that was that. Walked away, and because obviously there were quite a few people in line, so I didn't want to take up too much time. But it was hard because I really just wanted to stand there and just talk to them all. It's just for forever. So anyway, walked away, went back to my seat. The concert itself was just awesome. I mean, really, if you're a Newsboys fan, you were just spoiled rotten that whole night. They played 29 songs, guys. 29 songs. They played basically every hit that you could think of from the Newsboys, and both the past and present. And it was so cool. Got a lot of photos, got a lot of video. It was a blast. And then after the concert, Phil Joel, he's one of the former band members. He played bass for him, and he started his own group now called Zealand. They do a lot of worship music, and he was standing at the merchandise table for his band, and he was signing autographs and taking pictures and stuff. And I just happened to look over and see him, like, oh my gosh, there's Phil Joel. So I'll go ahead and see if I can get my picture taken with him. So me and the family are all just standing there, just waiting politely, and then we all get a selfie with him, and that was a fun moment too. It was fun. It was funny for me because I got to tell you this story. So Phil Joel, he's got long curly hair. He's from New Zealand, obviously, considering the name of his band, and he was the bass player for the Newsboys for I think oh my gosh, at least 10 years, maybe longer than that. It was like 12, 13 years. And then he left to do his own solo career. Well, I didn't start listening to the Newsboys till about 2008. and he had already left the band by then. So a month prior to when I first started getting into the Newsboys, he had already come to my church to play. It was like a tour with some other newer artists, and Phil Joel was the headlining act. He'd already come to my church to perform, but I didn't know who he was at the time. I was like, it's probably this new guy hoping to get somewhere in the world. And then about a month later, I start listening to the Newsboys, and I get one of their albums with Phil Joel on it, and I see his picture on the cover. I'm like, that guy looks familiar. And then I look inside the little book thing that comes with it, and I see his name, Phil Joel. I'm like, man, that really looks familiar. And it suddenly dawned on me that he signed the wall in my youth group room when he was at my church. And I didn't even know it was him. I was like, oh my gosh. A former member of the Newsboys was at my church, and I didn't even know it was him. I suddenly felt bad for thinking that he was just an up-and-coming artist that probably wasn't going to get very far. Like, oh my gosh, that's whoopsie. So I told him that story. Yes, I did actually tell him that story. I didn't say that I, didn't think he was going to get very far because I didn't know who he was, but I did say everything else. And he just kind of laughed. He said, well, we all make mistakes. So that was pretty funny. And then we got a picture taken with him, and yeah, that was that. We got back home pretty late, but it was worth it. It was definitely worth it. And all that to say, it was the most amazing thing about that for me. It wasn't the music. The music was great. It was awesome, of course. That is to be expected if you're a fan. Obviously, you're going to enjoy that. It wasn't all the crazy stunts they did, the spinning drum kit. You should look that up, by the way. Spinning drum kit, Newsboys. It's pretty awesome. It wasn't all that. It wasn't all the, the glitz and glamour and everything. It was the people. It was the message. They talked about, especially in the Q&A session, they talked about how they try to keep their relationship with Jesus strong. Despite having very busy lives. I mean, they just playing concerts is a very small part of what they do. It's a business. It's obviously, it's for Christ, of course, but it's also you have to make money. You have to, it's just the simple things. The things that you just have to do. But they try to keep themselves rooted in Scripture, and it was just great to hear that. It was great to hear them talk about that, and you just say you just met them off, on the street somewhere, and you didn't know who they were. You could tell pretty quickly that they're different, that they have Christ in them, because they exemplified it. I mean, they really did. Not just for what they did for me, but just the way they acted towards everybody. They treated everybody like they were family, like they were just great friends. There are people there who started listening to the Newsboys they'd been fans for 20-some years that were there, and it was just one amazing experience that I don't think anyone could have walked away being disappointed with. So just want to tell you about that, and just encourage you with that you really can do it. That it is important, no matter where you are, what you're doing. It's important to stay rooted in Christ, because people see that, and you can inspire a lot of people with the platforms that you have, whether it be social media, whether it be a position that you have at work or at school, or just wherever it is. It's important to, no matter what you're doing, to make sure that you're doing it for Christ. We'll be right back. I have to say, this whole debate on the Second Amendment is really getting tiresome to listen to when it comes to listening to people make ridiculous arguments on the other side. I mean, if you guys, you probably don't because you have a life. And you're probably even more thankful that you don't, especially after I say this. But I was looking at some of the comments that Piers Morgan was making. Piers Morgan, this guy, he was such a failure. He really is. And it stinks, too, because I really liked him from Celebrity Apprentice back when Trump was the one who was hosting the show. I enjoyed him, but his political views are just terrible. He's from Great Britain, too, so that basically tells you all you need to know about what his views on guns are. But he's getting into back and forth between him and Ben Shapiro, and I have to say, if you were going to get into a Twitter war with Ben Shapiro, you're not going to win. I'm just going to say it right now. I'm biased. I understand that. But Ben Shapiro has the facts on his side. And he, this was about a week ago, he was getting into it with Piers Morgan. And it was pretty glorious. If you have time, I would recommend going to Ben Shapiro's Twitter profile and just scrolling through. And you shouldn't have to scroll too far, but there's a thread there, and it's great. But I wanted to play for you this audio from a very common sense guy who's defending the Second Amendment, defending the NRA, and defending the ability to protect yourself. This was at I think it was Greensboro, North Carolina. This was at a city council meeting, I believe. And this guy by the name of Mark Robinson, I believe that's his name, he gets up and does this 4-minute monologue on why this debate between those who would rather do gun control or do gun confiscation or what have you, and those who believe in liberty and the Second Amendment, why this debate is just so telling, and we've got to stop with the lies. I want you to listen to this. It is very, very fulfilling. It feels so great. Check it out.
All right, my name is Mark Robinson. I live at 4015 Sassafras Court. That's right here in Greensboro. I've lived in Greensboro all my life. I didn't have time to write a fancy speech. I didn't have time to, I didn't have the resource of an English teacher to sit down and write a speech with at school today and be, brought over here or practice or anything. What I really came down here for is this. I've heard a whole lot of people in here talking tonight about this group and that group and domestic violence and blacks, these minorities and that minority. What I want to know is, when are you all going to start standing up for the majority? And here's who the majority is. I'm the majority. I'm a law-abiding citizen who's never shot anybody, never committed a serious crime, never committed a felony. I've never done anything like that. But it seems like every time we have one of these shootings, nobody wants to put the blame where it goes, which is at the shooter's feet. You want to put it at my feet. You want to turn around and restrict my right, constitutional right that's spelled out in black and white. You want to restrict my right to buy a firearm and protect myself from some of the very people you're talking about in here tonight. It's ridiculous. I don't think Rod Serling could come up with a better script. It does not make any sense. The law-abiding citizens of this community and many communities around this country, we're the first ones taxed and the last ones considered and the first ones punished when things like this happens, because our rights are the ones that are being taken away. That's the reason why I came down here today. Gun show or no gun show, NRA or no NRA. I'm here to stand up for the law-abiding citizens of this community, because I'm going to tell you that what's going to happen. You can take the guns away from us all you want to. You all write a law, I follow the law, I'll bring my guns down here, I'll turn them in. But here's what's going to happen. The Crips and the Bloods on the other side of town, they're not going to turn their guns in. They're going to hold on to them. And what's going to happen when you have to send the police down there to go take them? The police can barely enforce the law as it is. As what I see, we demonize the police, criminalize and vilify the police, and we make the criminals into victims. And we're talking about restricting guns? How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that when the police department's already hamstrung? You're not going to be able to go down here and take these guns from these criminals. So the criminals are going to hold on to their guns. They're still going to have them. They're still going to break in my house, and they're still going to shoot me with them. And guess who's going to be the one that suffers? It's going to be me. Well, I'm here to tell you tonight, it is not going to happen without a fight. And when I say fight, I don't mean shots fired. I don't mean fist thrown. I mean I'm going to come down here to this city council and raise hell just like these loonies from the left do until you listen to the majority of the people in this city. And I am the majority. The majority of the people in this city are law-abiding, and they follow the law, and they want their constitutional right to be able to bear arms. They want to be able to go to the gun show and buy a hunting rifle or a sport rifle. There are no military-grade weapons sold at the gun show. An AR-15 is not a military-grade weapon. Anybody that would go into combat with an AR-15 is a fool. It's a semi-automatic .22 rifle. You'd be killed in 15 minutes in combat with that thing. So we need to dispel all these myths, and we need to drop all this division that we got going on here. Because the bottom line is, when that Second Amendment was written, whether the framers liked it or not, they wrote it for everybody. And I am everybody. And the law-abiding citizens of this city are everybody. And we want our rights, and we want to keep our rights. And by God, we're going to keep them, come hell or high water.
Whew, man, that is pretty darn powerful. You literally could not word it better than that. I mean, he just nailed it right there. And that's the problem, right? That's the problem with society today, is they get so worked up over a weapon, over a tool, but they don't talk about what is really at the issue. It's the person. It's the corrupt nature that's in all of us. It's like he's saying, you can take all these weapons away from the law-abiding citizens. We'll give them, we'll follow the law. But the criminals, the gangs, they're not going to do that. They're just going to keep doing what they've always done, and that's break the law. And what are you going to do? And it's just, and I'd heard this argument before, and Ben Shapiro brought this up, how, people are like, well, how are you going to, you say the Second Amendment is about protecting us against, a overpowerful government. Well, what are you going to do, using a rifle against a tank? And, the argument against that is, well, here's the thing. There are over 300 million guns in this country against, a government or, an army or whatever. That is going to be quite a task to take all those guns away. And, if the people are able to defend themselves, if the Second Amendment is indeed not infringed, well, then you won't have to worry about that, will you? And that's the whole point. You don't get tyranny first and then a Second Amendment later. No, you get the Second Amendment first, and then you won't have to worry about tyranny. That's kind of the whole point. That's why there was a Constitution. That's why there was a Declaration. That's why all these things happened first, before anything got out of hand. That's the truth. And it kind of points to this story that just happened recently, I believe. And I'm trying to figure out what day it was. But I believe it was over the weekend. No, it was last week. Okay, it was last week at the University of Chicago. There was an incident where the police were called, the campus police, were at the scene, and they responded to calls last Tuesday that a student, a 21-year-old man, was walking up and down a street north of campus, damaging property with a large pipe or crowbar. Police cornered Thomas in an alley and told him to drop the weapon, at which point the man charged at the officers and was shot in the shoulder. He was charged with aggravated assault on a police officer with a weapon and the property damage, with his bond set at $15,000. Okay, so you look at this story and it seems like a pretty open and shut case, right? Police respond to a call. They say, drop your weapon. He charges at them. They don't kill him. They just shoot him in the shoulder to disable him, and he goes to prison. Okay? Well, that's not enough for these radical leftists at this university. What's going on? Well, now there's protesters on the campus saying that they believe that campus police should now be disarmed. Why do they say that? Because apparently the guy who shot, well, not the guy who shot, the guy with the crowbar, he had a mental illness. And they were saying, if police are going to start shooting people with mental illnesses, well, then they are obviously not here to protect us. And I saw that, I'm like, are you serious? You are not even, you're not even looking at the whole story. First of all, again, the police did not kill this person, okay? They shot him in the shoulder. They neutralized the threat. That's what they're supposed to do. When the police are on scene, they see a threat, and they take care of the threat. That doesn't mean that they have to kill him. It just depends on the situation. It depends on what's going on. But that's all they know. They don't know all the facts of the history of this guy. They don't know all these different things. Sometimes you're in an immediate situation, and you got to act fast. And they handled the situation the way they should have handled it. That's what they were trained to do. But of course, these students on campus are so triggered, are so, brainwashed with all this. I mean, Lord knows what kind of propaganda they're getting inside their classrooms, and their peers and what have you, who are more than likely. I mean, this is Chicago, guys. I mean, that's an extraordinarily liberal place, and by the way, a very gun control place, a very strict place on guns. Yet they seem to have a very high rate of gun homicides. It's kind of odd. And this just goes to show you that if you don't know what you're talking about, if you don't know your history, if you don't understand the basics, well, then you're going to either openly, either directly vote for and cheer for the elimination of your freedoms, or you will just stand idly by and let others do it for you. That's what happens. That's why we've got to be engaged. And I have to say, as annoying as it is sometimes to sit there to see all this rhetoric, it is also a relief, and I've said this before, it's a relief to see the pushback against it. Like that guy I just played for you, Mark Robinson, pushed back against it. Ben Shapiro, massive platform, talks about this kind of stuff every day, pushes back against it. So many different people on different campuses in the media are not letting this go, and they shouldn't. They shouldn't. This isn't about guns. This is about your liberties. This is about your safety. It's like Benjamin Franklin said, which is more important, freedom or security? And as we've talked about before, you can't have security without freedom. You can't have security without the ability to protect yourself. All right, we'll be right back.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Massive story that we have to talk about, and I'll just be upfront with you. I've been out of it over the weekend. I've been really busy, so I haven't had a lot of time to catch up with everything that's going on, but I do know about this story, and we've got to discuss it. Over the weekend, there was a chemical gas attack in Russia, and then there was a response by the Israeli Defense Force against Syria. Was it? I don't know if it was in Russia. It might have been in Syria. But there's at least 14 dead in Syria after the missile attack from Israel, and at least according to the Russians, they're blaming Israel for the missile attack. But here's the story from what I'm reading so far. At least 14 dead in Syria early Monday morning, USA Today reported, but Syrian media blamed us, the U.S., for the attack. President Donald Trump tweeted Sunday that there would be a big price to pay for the recent mindless chemical attack on Syrian civilians. Okay, so this happened in Syria. The poisonous gas killed at least 49 people in Douma. Many were women and children. French President Emmanuel Macron vowed Sunday during a phone call with the President Trump, to coordinate a joint response with the U.S. following Saturday's chemical attack. The U.S. Defense Department issued a statement and denied responsibility for the missiles, but said it would continue to closely watch the situation and support the ongoing diplomatic efforts to hold those who use chemical weapons in Syria and otherwise accountable. Now here's what the Russians are saying. According to the Syrian and Russian governments, 2 Israeli Air Force F-15 fighter jets fired 8 guided missiles at the T-4 military air base in central Syria just after midnight. 3 Iranians are reportedly among the 14 confirmed dead in the airstrikes. And as you know, Iran is a staunch ally of Syria, and Syria has been very oppressive towards their own citizens, as has Iran. Fox News reported that Rami Abdurrahman, the leader of the UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, said that most of the 14 that were killed were Iranians or were members of Iran-backed groups. The Civil Defense Force White Helmets said entire families were gassed to death on Saturday during the attack there. Medical centers reportedly treated more than 500 patients who suffered respiratory distress, burned eyes, foaming at the mouth, and other symptoms that included emission of chlorine-like odor. But Russian specialists who visited the site Monday said there was no evidence of a chemical attack on Douma. Of course they'd say that. Russian and Syrian governments have denied any wrongdoing against the people of Syria. Again, shocker. Here's some more interesting information. The UK and France have denied responsibility for the airstrikes, and the Israeli government has not yet commented on the attack. Trump has blamed Russian President Vladimir Putin and Iran for aiding Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's regime. And that's all I know so far. But this lines right up with their nature. Syria is well known for oppressing their people, for being a despotic, tyrannical regime. There is no religious freedom in Syria. There is no political freedom in Syria. You have to conform to the way that they want you to live. And it's even worse in places like Iran. And the president of Syria is a terrible, terrible human being. Al-Assad is not a good guy. And he hasn't been a good guy. Syria has not been one of our allies. And, I wouldn't be surprised if Israel actually did this, if they did launch those missiles, and I wouldn't blame them. You've got a chemical attack on your own citizens. Places like Syria and Iran and other places in the Middle East have threatened Israel for decades, at least, for even longer than that. You go back in the history, they've been battling it out for thousands of years, for centuries, and they had enough. And we have got to back their play. I don't know everything that's going on in the situation, but we have to stand by Israel. We have to stand by the people of Syria who are being oppressed, and the people of Iran who are being oppressed. And we have to make sure that we distinguish between the government and its people. So keep these people in your thoughts and prayers, because Lord knows what's going to happen in the future. This it's very dicey. Very, very dicey. And I mean, this has the familiarities of the Cold War era. Now there's new players. Now there's, more terrorism. Now there's, chemical weapons and nuclear weapons being talked about. I mean, this is scary stuff, guys. Very scary stuff. And we've got to be vigilant. We really do. All right, back in just a moment. I tell you, it is increasingly aware, if it wasn't before, it certainly is now, of how sick and twisted Planned Parenthood is. Now, Planned Parenthood, at least an official, is going after one of the Parkland shooting survivors, and obviously it's going to be the one who is the conservative. Here's what's going on. A Planned Parenthood official trolls Parkland shooting survivor Kyle Kashif's prom date. And this all began with an ill-advised tweet from Laura Ingraham that mocked David Hogg over his college rejections. And for that, these student activists called for a boycott of her advertisers. However, when CNN's Joan Walsh simply mocked a Parkland survivor, no boycott was called, because it was one of the conservative ones. Now a Planned Parenthood official has mocked a Parkland survivor. According to Life News, a Planned Parenthood senior advisor was caught bullying a survivor of the Parkland, Florida school shooting and his date to the prom Thursday on Twitter. Ever since the Parkland protest became a national conversation, skip some of that. So the lady's name is Elizabeth Thorpe. What happened was, here's what took place. Thorpe mocked Kashif's date to the prom that day, writing on the young woman's Twitter page, "Hard pass, sweet girl, you can do better." Then Kashif responded by saying, why does Elizabeth Thorpe feel bullying a Parkland survivor is okay? More importantly, why is she bullying my date? And then she said, "Not bullying Kyle, giving her some motherly advice after she publicly asked to help scoring a prom date." Jeez. I mean, this lady is just despicable. And Planned Parenthood, obviously, is despicable. I mean, they go out of their way to make themselves look more and more detestable, as much as they possibly can. And, it's sickening. Truly sickening. Other things in the news, Joss Whedon gets suspended from Twitter, at least temporarily, and with good reason. I don't know. Maybe the libertarian in me is kind of struggling with this one, but it just, if Twitter is going to claim that they are for this, well, maybe they should be consistent with it. So, Joss Whedon, those of you who most likely know, director of the Avengers movies, and a very outspoken far-left guy, hates Donald Trump, and tweeted out something that I thought was pretty disgusting. He says, Donald Trump is killing this country, some of it quickly, some slowly, but he spoils and destroys everything he touches. He emboldens monsters, wielding guns, governmental power, or just smug doublespeak, or Russia. My hate and sadness are exhausting. Die, Don. Just quickly and quietly die. For the death wish, Whedon, whose Twitter feed has become increasingly characterized by hysterical partisan apocalyptic vitriol, was slapped on the wrist by Twitter and his account briefly suspended, as opposed to being permanently suspended like libertarian comedian Owen Benjamin. And, well, of course, now his profile is back up. So this was his response to the suspension. He says, well, I was put in Twitter suspension, but luckily there was also a jock a weird girl, a socialite, and a rebel, and it turns out we're all the same or something. Anyway, they all hooked up, and I had to write this tweet, so I'm not sure. Trump's still killing the country, though. LOL. And I guess there was a Breakfast Club reference, which I admit to not seeing that movie. Probably won't ever see it. But yeah, his reference didn't resonate with many folks online, but his declaration that Trump is somehow still killing the country no doubt helped further endear him to his fellow Hollywood celebrities, of course. And, this is just... It's just disgusting. And this isn't the first time, I believe, that Joss Whedon has tweeted something like this. He tweeted something pretty disgusting last year to Paul Ryan. And he said, "Violence solves nothing. I want a rhino to blank Speaker Ryan to death with its horn because it's funny, not because he's a GOP murder bro." Oh my gosh. This is... I don't think I saw that one, but... Are you going to go see a Marvel movie now after that? Some of you probably will. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I want to, with him being involved in it. I mean, this guy makes a ton of money off of those movies, and... This is a tough area, guys. It's a really tough area. I talked to you about last week when Mark Hamill said something not quite as vitriolic, but pretty detestable, pretty divisive, when he said that I hate our president because I love our country. And I'm just... Aren't you just tired of it? I mean, seriously, these people... I mean, I guess on the one hand, it's a little laughable because it just shows how sensitive they are and how much they cannot handle a different opinion, a different viewpoint. And it just further shows how sick these people are inside. But I just look at things like that, and I say to myself, it is so important that I don't ever allow myself to become that sick inside, that depressed. I mean, I'll just say it. These people, they are not shining the light of Christ in them. They are not exhibiting the fruit of the Spirit in any fashion whatsoever, at least with those particular comments. It shows that we are all flawed. It shows that we all need a Savior. We cannot rely on our own power. And I don't understand the people who excuse it, who defend it, who ignore it, who laugh at it. It just does not help. It doesn't help. It doesn't add to anything good. And we'll just have to see. We just have to keep these people in our prayers because, gosh, they need help. They really, really, truly do. All right. So we've only got a short amount of time left on the show. I have to say, I'm increasingly impressed by Bill Maher. Not by his political viewpoints in terms of his liberalism and his religious viewpoints, of course, I strongly disagree with. But this guy is one of the very few honest liberals and one of the very few liberals out there who seems to be wanting to protect everybody's First Amendment right, not just those who agree with him. Bill Maher slammed David Hogg for his boycott campaign against Laura Ingraham. He has come out against David Hogg from the Parkland shooting for trying to boycott Laura Ingram's show just because of a simple tweet. And he, in a panel discussion with his left-leaning guest, including former Democratic New York Governor Eliot Spitzer, Maher pushed back against the increasingly frequent, usually left-wing tactic of boycotting advertisers in order to silence political opponents. In his criticism of the boycott against Ingram, whom he described as a deliberately terrible person, Maher points out that her tweet poking fun at Hogg was rather innocuous. Most of the panelists admitted that they don't think the boycott is really about Ingram's tweet, rather that she is a Fox News host with right-leaning views who supposedly often says all kinds of offensive things. Maher quickly turned the conversation to Hogg and his fellow Parkland activists, whom he said have put themselves in the arena and thus must be willing to take the blows. He says, quote, "Again, Hogg is in the arena," and then he calls for a boycott of her sponsors. "Really? Is that American?" said Maher. Though many in his audience made clear that they loved the boycott against Ingram, he continued, "He complains about bullying. That's bullying. What he's doing is bullying. It can't be the case that you're your own human shield." Maher said later, "I understand they're in high school, so if they say something, people do have the right to answer back." Maher offered some context for why he had such a strong reaction to the increasingly employed boycott. He says, "I've been the victim of a boycott. I've lost a job as a result. It is wrong. You shouldn't do this by team. You should do it by principle." And let's see. During the discussion, Maher mentioned rapper Killer Mike, who was forced to apologize for pushing back against the progressive gun control message. He said, "My friend Killer Mike said something on NRA TV recently, and it was perfectly reasonable, and he had to apologize. And he shouldn't have had to apologize." This is Bill Maher saying this, by the way, guys. He says, "All he said was, we're a gun-owning family. That's a perfectly reasonable point of view." He says, "I told my kids on the school walkout, I love you." No, this was Killer Mike that said this. "I love you. If you walk out that school, walk out of my house." Killer Mike said, "We are a gun-owning family. We are a family where my sister farms. We are a family where we'll fish, we'll hunt, but we are not a family that jumps on every single thing an ally of ours does because some stuff we just don't agree with." And this, to me, is inspiring. It really is. It shows that there are a few honest people left, and people like Bill Maher, on the left, he's got a pretty big platform. He reaches a lot of people now. Unfortunately, there's a lot of, and again, obviously, he says some things that I strongly disagree with, and that he is misleading people with, and he's misleading himself on. But things like that, doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal, we should all be protecting each other's right to have an opinion, to be able to speak freely. That's the beauty of this country. That's what sets us apart from every other country in the world, where you can be free. And if you start taking away somebody else's freedom, you ultimately lose your own. And that is the truth. Alright, it's a bit of a short show today, but like I said, I've only had so much time to catch up on the news, but I wanted to try to address some of the big things that have been going on recently. I tell you, this chemical attack in Syria is very, very disturbing, and we will definitely need to keep an eye on that moving forward, because we have got to pray for our leaders. We've got to pray for the president, because he is in an impossible situation right now, having no idea what's going to happen from here, and it's dicey. It is extremely, extremely dicey. So hopefully we'll have better news on that front in the weeks and months ahead. Hopefully we'll be able to come to some sort of solution, even if it's just temporary. At this point, any good news is good news. Any news that's not terrible news is good news at this point. It's a sad, sad world, but we still can find hope in it. And with that, I bid you good night. Have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the weather. Hopefully, wherever you're living, wherever you're listening to this show from, you actually are enjoying warmer weather. If you're in Missouri like me, hopefully the spring weather does come back. And hopefully the allergies go down. It just can't have that. All right, we'll see you back here next time. Take care, everyone, and God bless.